Exceptional Randos show is produced live in Sunroom Studios' Base Capsule and in partnership with KLST 103.5, RadioCallisti.org. Remember to catch our Exceptional Randos live stream on YouTube every Sunday between 2 and 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And if you have a story, idea, or question that you would like to share, we want to hear from you. Thanks for listening.
Well, that was random.
Exceptional Radio. Hey, good afternoon. It's the 12th of December, and we are on the, I guess it's not the eve, it's on the, the tail end of a tornado disaster in the Midwest. And so the entire last, day or so, I've been thinking like, well, this can't be right. This is December. It's not supposed to be tornado season. And for the most part, it's true. Not up in Indiana or parts of Illinois or even Kentucky. But in the South, like Alabama, Arkansas, Louisiana, tornadoes do happen in December. And so I went looking into this, and it turns out that for the past 70 years, the tornado count has just been steadily increasing year by year, every year. And right now, we're only 12 days into December. So, there's, 19 days left? 30 days? No, 18 days left in the year? No, it is 19. I don't even know how many days are in December. Yeah, 19 days left. We're almost at the average tornado count, which is derived from the number of tornadoes between 1991 and 2010. And that's just like, we're already there. We're already at the average, and we're only 12 days into the month. And this is nationally. This shit's crazy.
There's definitely some crazy shit happening with this. Like,
we're getting like giant atmospheric rivers dumping flood quantities of water all over portions of the West Coast and into the western side of the Rockies. We're getting like insane weather phenomenon occurring all over the place. Something's got to give, right? And, I can't remember where I think it was in chat. You shared that like the 1% and above are producing more carbon emissions than pretty much everyone else combined outside of industry or military industrial complex or anything like that. And so like, even if like in the United States, even if everyone else, the 99% were to reach zero carbon emissions, it only takes like a day for the 1% to offset that completely. And so with that, I hereby change my position on electric vehicles and subsidizing them, because if there's any way just to bring down their carbon emissions just a little bit, maybe that'll be enough. Maybe I'm wrong.
I mean, and one of the problems is we as individuals are made to feel as if our individual actions are the ones, and it's not to say that we don't contribute on the individual level, but the damage that's being done by the 1% is just so far beyond.
It's incomprehensible.
It's like, what was it? The 75 million people, what we all, because we're in the lower 70% or 50%. So what we all produce in our entire lifetimes as individuals, they produce the same as what I would produce in my entire lifetime over the course of 11 minutes. So, or they can in the worst cases. And This is like worst case scenario where they're like flying to the lower Earth orbit just to like take fucking selfies. That's the type of shit where we're like, oh, they're just flying to low Earth orbit to take selfies. And in the process, that's it. That's literally it.
Well, they're not getting their flight wings anymore. FAA said that there are too many people flying into space to get space wings. They shouldn't get them anyways. These aren't astronauts.
They're not even actually going into space. Yeah. They're not going into actual space. They're going in low Earth orbit. So it's not even full on space.
Is it really space if it's still within the radius of the moon?
No, I mean, no,
No, and that's a loaded question because we learned a few years ago that our Earth's atmosphere actually extends out to the moon. It's like 16 parts per million of helium and hydrogen and oxygen reach that far out. Our atmosphere wraps around the moon. It's not even space.
So the more we learn about actual space, the less it makes sense for space tourism to become a thing that wealthy people do while the rest of us are forced to stop driving gas cars. I mean, not even forced. Like it's like the things that we have been done. There's like a manufactured, complicit aspect of our existence where it's like we can only buy the cars that are made for us in the sense of like, even if you know, because you've built a car, it's like, even if you're to build a car, there's only so far you can go in producing the materials with action. And it's like, you're limited by proxy of your location in this country. And they want to make it seem like anything is possible to create this dream of what America was in people's minds. It was never even that. At no point in America's history was there the possibility for opportunity without somebody being exploited. And that's just the way it is. So it's like, there's this notion of like, oh, you could become a billionaire without oppressing people at some point. And it's like, no, that's never been possible. It's never been possible. So I think there's this romanticized notion of America that is not accidental. It's created intentionally, but in the process, it then creates this scenario where the individual feels responsible for making this massive change to a society that the 1% make it impossible for us to actually affect that change. No matter how much you and I recycle, no matter how much you and I don't drive gasoline cars, some fucking rich douchebag is gonna fly to goddamn low Earth orbit to take some fucking selfies. It's gonna offset 75 million of us. You know,
for by that logic, life. I'm gonna change my mind about people who roll coal. Then, you know, if billionaires are gonna go and destroy the atmosphere.
Hold up. It doesn't make the coal rollers like, those people are like,
no, that's terrible shit.
They want to be they just don't have enough money to
to go to space
to pollute that bad. They're like, they want to pollute on the local level, and they just wish they could pollute on the fucking universal level. And that's why it's like, no, the coal rollers still fucking suck. It's just like the people who try not to destroy the planet are then offset by the people who don't give a fuck. And that's why it's like, yeah, the coal rollers make it like, it's not that I should stop giving a fuck. It's like, no matter how many animals I don't eat, how many times I'm like vegetarian, how often I walk instead of driving, some fuckhead is going to be out there just rolling coal because he's got a small dick and wants to pretend it's for some other reason. So then I have to fucking deal with the planet that this fucking idiot is ruining because he can't deal with the fact that his penis is small. So that's where it's like, all these people who want to do this fucking demonstrative shit just because they can't fuck. And all it comes down to is the shit between their legs at the end of the day for these guys. And we all know that. So it's not even me being like, well, it's not even a joke.
What's even more surreal is that they always do it around people driving a Prius. Like that's when I notice it. It's like, I see a Prius. It's like, wait, where's the coal roller? Oh, there they are. Okay. It's a countdown. There it is.
Literally have nuts on their truck. So this is not even, there's no exaggeration. This is 100% them compensating for some shit they don't have in their pants that they can put on their truck and then destroy the planet because they don't like living here. And that's the fucked up thing is like, because these guys don't like living. They want to make shit miserable for everyone else. I want to roll coal. It's my right to roll coal. Well, you're a fucking asshole for doing it. Like, just because you have the right and capacity to do it. And it's like all the other things that those people could be doing with their time and energy, they choose to fucking destroy the planet.
Well,
and it's like, there's a special kind of asshole that has to take their free time and energy to use it to just destroy the fucking planet for no fucking reason. That's the special kind of asshole.
The thing that always gets me is that, like, the trucks that I see rolling coal at one point in their life were actually pretty nice. They were capable vehicles of a lot of work. And the majority of the ones that I see that roll coal have been modified in such a way that they would no longer be suitable for that kind of work. So they've essentially neutered themselves so that they can create this monumental cloud. It no longer really serves a purpose. And then half the time when they're doing it, so here's the crazy part. They dump fuel into their system at a low gear, so it just keeps pumping fuel, and eventually it reaches the turbo, and the turbos are hot, and those are the things that start smoking. So they're running it in a very inefficient way, damaging the whole system. The whole system destroys the vehicle. Like, just running like that. And so it's like a double whammy. Not only do they hate themselves, but they hate their truck.
Yeah, they don't even treat their trucks well. So
yeah, like that's the part that blows my mind. Trucks aren't cheap. You can't just have a big vehicle like that without like a business model. I mean, some people do, obviously, but
it's white socialism. That's the business model. They pretend to hate socialism. They get these checks from the government, and then they fucking spend them on trucks that roll coal and a bunch of guns. That's the business model. Let's not pretend they have some fucking, like, if somebody is able to buy a vehicle to roll coal, you would think that they've like figured out something in their lives to be able to get that much money. It's like, no, it's like white socialism is what
like,
it comes
seriously,
down
like,
to.
where do I sign up for the coal rolling truck and guns socialist list?
You're not white enough, bro.
I
know. What do you not understand about white socialism? You gotta look like fucking some dude named Colin. Fucking, you need to like be allergic to the sun. Fucking shit like that, where you're like, okay. Have you not seen that Eddie Murphy skit? Oh my god!
The bank, the one where he tries to go get a loan.
And then he does it as a black person or as a white person. Yeah, and that's where I'm like, man, they were talking about this shit fucking decades ago.
Yeah,
and it's so true. Where you're like, you go back and you go back even further, and then you could go back, then you get to the Homestead Act. And then you realize, like, holy shit, they were giving land away to white people in the 1800s. And then if black people, like, took advantage of it, white people stole the land from them. Holy shit, they've been doing this shit for fucking 100 years, more than 100 years. So it's like the way that the socialism has been hidden, and they actively hate on socialism in public and make it seem like they don't like socialism. Meanwhile, they're running white socialism in the background. This is some shit that the fucking quote unquote Democrats and left aren't brave enough to call out because they're too busy trying to run watered down versions and then use those watered down versions as an excuse to say why they won't work, that people aren't actually getting to the, like, they're not even calling out the white socialism. They're not getting to the point. The whole self-made white billionaire narrative dominates so much that nobody ever gets to the point, well, how'd they start? Like, I just saw this article about some quote unquote self-made white billionaire who dropped out of fucking school. And guess what? This motherfucker got $100,000 from Peter Thiel or Peter Thiel or whatever the fuck you pronounce his name. This fucking grifter douchebag billionaire who keeps creating these fucking lies. He makes these white lies out of like people who everybody would believe to be this, like, oh, this is the next Steve Jobs. This is the one. He's manufacturing these lies every time you read a billionaire story, it's not necessarily Peter Thiel, but there's always somebody like him. Gave him $100,000 to start. And you're like, wait, what the fuck? They just got $100,000 to start, and you're calling these people self-made? Fuck out of here with that self-made bullshit.
Maybe they came up with. I mean, did they even come up with their idea themselves? That gave them the $100,000?
No, the idea. Oh, this is what it was. They were just doing fucking laser. It's LiDAR. It's just a fucking LiDAR company. They didn't create LiDAR. They just decided, oh, there's this market now. We're going to make this fucking company and create LiDAR for vehicles and specialize in that. And we're going to make $1 billion company. We're going to be a unicorn company by specializing in this shit that we didn't even invent. So no, they didn't create it. They just decided we're going to specialize in this thing. And dude got $100,000 to start. And now the media narrative is that this is a self-made billionaire with the technology that he didn't even invent.
Man.
But that's not the way they'll phrase it, because people aren't smart enough to see through the bullshit when the people spitting out these stories aren't smart enough to see it. They're just, it's crazy how little thought goes into the mainstream reporting, because I won't even call it journalism. They just like report what they're told and they read teleprompters. So that's the fear of dead air, the fear of misplaced ums and uhs and likes and whatever is what prevents these people from speaking freely. And they get so attached and addicted to the teleprompter that even if they are politically minded, they freeze up in front of a camera and they can't speak their mind because they're so used to having their thoughts and words laid out in front of them that the fear of looking stupid, which is a real fear that a lot of people get paralyzed from, prevents them from speaking publicly. And fortunately for me, I've been like, my parents pushed me into public speaking when I was a child. I did like the debate team. This shit that I did as a young person to prepare for public speaking that a lot of people never did. So when I do public speaking now, it like looks like, oh, this guy's just really, no, I like suffered through the fucking awkwardness. I suffered through the like, man, I don't want to be here moments like all the time, doing shit that I definitely didn't want to do. I had to introduce people at church. Like there's so many things that I did that I didn't want to do to make myself a better public speaker, that now as an adult, public speaking is just like, I still sweat. I still get the like stress sweat, but it's not a big deal. But not because I'm just good at it, because I fucking suffered through doing it for so long that now I can just do it. And that's where
also now you're an adult and you have experience and you realize like, you know, the responsibility that you have and the importance of what you're talking about at times. I'm just trying to think of reasons why somebody might start sweating as an adult after having years of experience.
I mean, it's a biological response. Yeah. You are on the spot. You are in front of everyone. There's nothing you can learn or do to stop a biological response. And there's some bullshit that people are like, oh, you can be like Jason Bourne and do this. Yeah, no, fuck out of here.
No, those guys just
it's a
like
biological response.
Well, those guys have like really like what's the way to describe it? They lack an adrenal response. Like that they're
that's why they're fictional people.
Yeah, their physiological response to anything is like non-existent. That just I don't think that happens.
No, there's no real person, because again, if that were the case, then that person not having an adrenal response would prevent them from actually performing at a heightened state that then they're supposed to be able to perform at, which is why that's a fictional. The character's concept is a fictional paradox. So it's
he
like,
lacks an endocrine system.
Exactly. If you don't have a stress response, you can't perform at a heightened level. Like you have to have the stress response for everything to become heightened. Otherwise, it's at baseline. So that's where I'm like, the way you receive and react to the stress response is what sets people apart. Whereas like if I'm speaking and I get an adrenaline dump, I know all the things I need to do so that I don't start talking faster, so that I don't stumble over my words, so that I don't forget things. Because when you have an adrenaline dump during a public speech, there's a bunch of things that the adrenaline will make your body do by proxy that if you're not prepared for them, then you'll start talking faster and you're going to start stumbling over your words and you're going to forget things and then repeating things. So there's like all these things that people end up doing because they don't practice and they don't know how to manage their body's stress response. It's not that the stress response goes away. It's that you learn how to deal with it and learn techniques to manage it so that, yeah, everybody sweats. So that's why you wear a jacket so nobody sees your sweat. And that's what there's like all these things to like the whole approach to public speaking on the spot. When somebody does it really well, it looks like they just did it and it just came to them like manifested out of divine inspiration. And in some ways that's what happened in the moment, but that doesn't come without a lot of preparation. So that's where the people who don't do the preparation and don't see the preparation see the end result and want it to come just like these fucking stupid movies that make it seem like, oh, you just pick up a bow and you start shooting and a couple of times you miss, but after like 3 hours, you'll be dead on fucking Robin Hood shit. And it's like, man, the way that Western media makes it seem like you can just be good at stuff like, oh, you just activated something that was inside. No, you have to like actually practice to then manage the stress response. Because even if you're good at it, performing under stress is a completely different thing.
Yeah.
And that's like what people continue to minimize so that it's like, yeah, you want to go to space, but you don't want to be in space fixing the fucking Hubble telescope. You don't want to be that person because your stress response, you're on the fucking spacewalk, you're in low gravity, you have to wear a fucking diaper. You might get hit with space debris. You're shitting your fucking pants trying to fix this multi-million-dollar telescope and hope you don't lose your fucking wrench because your goddamn fingers are stuck in these space gloves. So you don't really have that much mobility. So you can't really fucking grip the wrench. Nobody wants to be there. They just want to be in low Earth orbit taking the fucking selfie. Because nobody thinks about like, well, what happens when the toilet fucks up in that vehicle? Who's gonna fix it? Raise your hand if you want to fix the toilet.
I mean, I'm not gonna lie. If I had to learn how to do all those things so I could go into space and do something interesting and not have to hang out with people who wanted to take selfies all the time, that'd be kind of cool because then I would know how a spaceship works. But I don't think that that's like what you're describing. I think you're describing a space janitor or a space custodian, and that's like a completely different thing. They're trained for low gravity environments, and they're probably. This is a big net, but I bet that they are, by virtue of spending many, many hours huffing duster, able to withstand low oxygen environments for longer. Because I mean.
I'm sure, but there's this element of I was watching videos of astronauts talking about random parts of the space experience. And so one guy was talking about like waking up in space, not just sleeping in space, like the whole waking up in space. And he's like, how completely unnerving and disorienting it is every fucking time. Like, what the fuck? Where am I? Oh shit, I'm in space. And he's like, it never goes away. It's like every time you wake up, it's like you can do things to make it less disorienting, but he was saying it's just something you never get used to. And then even as much gravity training as they did, low G's, high G's, he said every time for the first few times, it's like no matter who you are, you're gonna puke because your inner ear can't understand what's happening. And so there's like no motion in your inner ear, but you see motion happening with your eyes. So like everybody pukes. It's not something that you can, and this gets back to the whole notion of like, There's no fucking Jason Bourne in real life. Like all the astronauts puke. Every astronaut fucking pukes. There's no, oh, this guy is Buzz Lightyear. He was the one. His stomach was made of iron. He could sleep upside down every fucking night. He never snored one time. And it's like the notion of the way that people can create these mythical characters of like what the perfect, like the Ubermensch would be, and then like act as if this exists in real life. It's like, no, everybody pukes, man. Just get over it. Everybody pukes. If you're going into zero gravity, you're gonna puke.
We're talking
at least
about
the first couple times.
We're talking about a job description that includes wearing a diaper.
Right.
Not just any diaper, but a diaper that's rated for a launch into space.
Yeah, and consuming recycled excrement. That's part of the job. Oh, you want to stay in space for a few years or a few months? You're gonna have to eat some poop. That's what it comes down to, bud.
It's in the water. It's on the walls. It's everywhere.
Yeah, and it's like active part of their recycling cycle is like. Your urine, your feces, yep, it's being collected and recycled, so you're gonna eat it again, buddy. Yes, that's part of the astronaut's experience. Like, if it's like a long-term one, in the early, man, they just had bags taped to their legs and shit in the 60s. Nobody talks about how crappy of a job it was to be an astronaut early on.
You know, it's funny, but it never actually occurred to me to look for the toilet whenever I saw the space capsule or look inside the space shuttle, like when the exploded views. It never occurred to me to look for the toilet.
And apparently shitting in zero gravity is like really difficult. No, being an astronaut is not glamorous at all. At all. Even now, there's zero glamour in the whole astronaut thing. So going up to low Earth orbit to take a selfie for that much waste and destruction of the planet is like really... okay.
They're paying a lot of money to get a selfie of themselves in a diaper.
Yeah, and that's what I'm like. On the one hand, I just really want a bunch of rich people to actually go to Mars and just have a terrible experience the entire fucking time where they thought it was going to be like a fucking...
Yeah, but they'll have some NDA or something like that.
Oh, yeah, and they won't be able to talk about it.
They'll only be able to... Yeah, they'll have to, like, get there and read a bunch of scripts in front of the camera, which will be sent out at like, broadcast at scheduled intervals that coincide with when their facility is facing the satellite that can beam their signals back to Earth, but it'll all be staged. They're going to be
Fire
miserable.
Festival, but in space. Elon Musk is totally setting up Fire Festival on Mars. And this motherfucker's talking about quitting everything now. I don't know if you saw that.
Yeah, that's
but it's
just...
like...
I saw that.
Of course he's going to quit. Of course he's going to quit because he was never actually trying to do all this shit. It was all a grift. Of course he's going to quit and become an influencer. Of course.
He's smoking whatever that good shit that Joe Rogan's got.
Oh, my God. No, it was always a grift, man. This was always a grift. He hasn't done anything to the levels of what he promised on any front. Not the car production, not the space fucking shit, not the batteries, not the robot and the human in a costume. He like the Neuralink. He has the Hyperloop. He has produced nothing he promised to the scale that he promised.
They did
none of it.
They did release that $1,000 big wheel that looks like the Cybertruck. It's like the same big wheel that you can get from Toys R Us or
I bet
Walmart.
It'll explode too. I bet it'll unnecessarily explode for no reason.
Well, I mean, it is battery powered, so
I bet they made it somehow so that now you got a big wheel that's gonna blow up.
Speaking of Tesla vehicles, I saw pictures of the production Tesla, the Cybertruck, and they've added something that is really kind of surreal. It's a windshield wiper blade. And it is as tall as the windshield, and it pivots from the lower driver's corner, like across the whole fucking thing. But it sticks out. It almost looks like a roof rack rail. It's that big, and it kind of throws off the entire like balance of their real clean minimalist truck body.
Oh, you know what I think happened? I bet because I think they were trying to do some like laser wiper shit, and it probably didn't work. And now they had to add
They
a
blinded
fucking
their test
windshield
driver.
wiper.
They tried to use the laser to blinded their test driver.
I mean, because I remember reading something about how they were trying to do a different type of rain system. So that's what
Rain
I'm like.
management. Yeah, well, whatever
I don't even know what to call it.
Whatever
yeah,
it is, they gave up, and they're using this gigantic wiper blade, and it looks hideous. It just throws off the whole balance that they've achieved. I'm not even a fan of the Cybertruck. I think it looks dumb.
Looks horrible. It looks like a minimalist warthog.
Yeah, it does look like a warthog with a truck bed. So here's the one thing that they could do to save the Cybertruck. So because it's all made out of metal and all that good stuff, they can figure out a way to have panels that will just attach to the geometric surfaces, and those panels can have all of the shapes, the fancy shapes that make them look like a warthog, or make it look like an actual tank, or they can make it like smooth and curvy like a spaceship. They can make it look like the truck that they drive around in on Lost in Space. Well, it already kind of looks like that. That's like the cyber van, I guess. Cyber minivan. But that's the only thing that I think they could do. Like, because otherwise, it's a bunch of straight lines. Like, not only can I still see the cube of clay that it was carved out of, but they turned it into an even more ugly cube of clay and put wheels on it.
Yeah, I don't know, man.
It's a solution to a problem that never existed.
I lost faith in American aesthetics when the PT Cruiser came out.
So when Chevy made that HHR thing, you probably just like, you gave up, right? You're like, fuck this shit.
Yeah, that was like, oh yeah, no, this is the aesthetic preference I thought it was. These people have no taste in anything. This is what happens when you eat 70% lean meat. So that's where I have no faith that the Cybertruck design will get any better, because the people who want the target audience is like,
I'm saying that the
Cybertruck PT Cruisers,
the Cybertruck design can only get better. It only has room for improvement.
You know, now that I think about it though, if they just rounded off the corners,
all of the corners.
No, just the four corners, it would just dramatically improve what we have already. There are, like you're saying, it is almost only up from here. But I can totally see these people with this particular leader with heavy air quotes fucking it up even more. Like, he'll add just two asymmetric fins in the wrong places or some shit where you're like, wait, why is this fin backwards? And you're like, no, this is he's saying it's an avant-garde design. And you're like, oh God, there's going to be,
okay, so that only really works with things that are utility driven. Things that are driven by utilitarian aesthetic, which basically is like, I don't care what it looks like, it just needs to get the job done. Like, that makes sense. Yeah. Then you get to have an asymmetrical design that it's like, oh yeah, well that actually makes sense, because you don't want to put extra crap all over the thing. It's a utility thing. And but a cars need to be symmetrical. Cars need to be symmetrical. Trucks, Yeah, sure. You can put a hoist on one side, like a big fucking like a crane, sure, or a big ass boom arm, and then it has the cherry picker off to the side. Yeah, that makes sense because it's not your personal vehicle. It's designed to do a job. Oh man! So speaking of things that are designed to do a job, so in fashion, I've been thinking about this for the past several days. In fashion, the goal is to stand out most of the time. It's to get attention. It's to and not just that, but be appropriate for the environment or the situation. So like, you don't wear a fancy outfit or a suit or a dress to a event, and you wear appropriate clothing to go outside in cold weather. You have rain gear if you're going to be outside in torrential downpour. There's all sorts of fashions that are kind of specific to their thing, and when you wear them in those places, they do their thing, and you kind of stand out. So there's one that I've been noticing because it's the season. There's a lot of camo that if somebody were in the woods and I didn't know they were there, I probably wouldn't notice them. But if they're like standing around Kroger, I completely notice. Not only do I notice them, they stand out more than the person who's wearing a bright sweater. And so on some level, it's like, did this whole like camo culture, did they break fashion in the sense? Like, you can't not notice them. And the clothing isn't bad. I mean, it's the same design, the same physical design or pattern for the clothing. It's just got these crazy camouflage patterns built into them.
Okay, so as someone who used to wear different color camo frequently, I can speak to this. So there are two different types of camo wearers. There are those that pretend that they're going to go out hunting and use the camo to like
blend in.
No, to virtue signal. They're not actually hunting.
Yeah.
And then there's people who wear camo as like a fashion statement. Otherwise, if people are actually hunting, they're out at times when you're not going to see them if you're a regular person.
Yeah,
so this is where I'm saying
4 or 5 in the morning.
Exactly. So anybody who's ever been actually hunting, you don't fucking see hunters because they're out at 4 in the fucking morning. This is where the people you see out wearing camo, like I said, you don't actually see hunters out because they're out at 4 in the morning. The people who wear it out are doing it to virtue signal, and they're like, I'm a good old boy, and most of them don't actually hunt because
like
this
the
is
clothing.
where exactly.
Yeah.
And they like these are the same people who wear cowboy hats and cowboy boots, but have never actually been a rancher.
Or even been on a horse, maybe.
They like the persona.
Yeah.
And it's 100% cosplay, and they like what people perceive them as when they see them in the hunting gear. They're like, oh, this man, he's all for himself. He probably has a refrigerator full of deer and venison, and he shot that deer and he skinned it himself. When in reality, that motherfucker's probably never actually been hunting in his life. Because that's where, like I said, if you've ever actually been hunting, like you're usually done before other people are awake and back home, because it's like either you got your shit or the forest is dead, and it's like it's pretty. It lasted like 2 to 3 hours, and like I said, you're done or like before most other people are waking up, and you're back home, either eating or getting your shit preparing the animal to be stored or whatever. It's not something that lasts all fucking day. Like it's just, man, the way people who've never hunted portray the culture. That's why you can tell the ones who wear the Carhartt overalls, their overalls are never dirty, or they're fucking, the hoodies never have dirt on them or never have fucking grass stains or shit like that, because they've never actually worn them in the woods. They've never actually walked through brush. They've never actually hauled a carcass. So there's all these things where you're like, you can tell. That's also where this is where when I was wearing like red camo or blue camo or white camo, it's like clearly if you're wearing red camouflage, what the fuck are you gonna blend in with? Like a lava fucking stream or some shit?
The red light district.
You know what I mean?
You're hiding in a pile of red magazines.
There's like certain color camos where you're like, okay, there's nothing that this would blend in with. So when you match other clothes with it, it's obviously meant to be a statement about fashion and about how like colors can work in different ways, and you can have different things that like obviously are meant to stand out, but look uncoordinated, but end up being coordinated. So it's like camouflage can be used to make a fashion statement, but it can also be used to make a statement about values that's often hollow. It's often the same people who are like pretending to be military, but they never actually served and shit like that. It's
the cosplay commandos, the guys who wear all tactical gear that might not even have the right size tactical gear. That stuff is amusing. There was an entire Twitter thread about cosplay commandos during the siege of Michigan's government. I think there was a siege.
Which one at this point?
The first one. I think it was the first one because there were a bunch of cosplay commandos who showed up, and so like U.S. Army Twitter, whatever Army Twitter. There was a bunch of guys who just were like, these guys who basically commented on the way they were wearing the tactical equipment. That like most of the guys were wearing vests that were either too big or too small. They had shit in their pockets that like they should have put on their pack, and like things like nobody wears that many clips on their chest. None of these guys have knee pads. Like. What's going to happen the first time they try and jump out of the way of something? They're going to break their knees. They're going to roll over that giant thing in their cargos, and it's going to fuck them up. So there's a bunch of things that are apparently telltale signs to people who have extensive training with that kind of equipment. It's like, oh yeah, this person's not even wearing it right. And for the rest of us, it's like it just looks like some person dressing up, playing army. But what I've noticed though is that like that person in Kroger or wherever who's wearing camo, like whatever Realtree, there's something that stands out about them more in that environment because it's like clearly not intended for that environment.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
it stands out so much. It's
exactly.
It's like the loudest, even though it's like gray and brown and green and subdued. It's brighter than anything else around it.
That's exactly why
incredible.
It's meant to send a signal, and that's where I mean like.
But then you put that person in the woods, and the only time you see them is if they're wearing an orange hat.
Right, exactly.
And so in the intended environment,
or an orange vest,
yeah, exactly,
or an orange vest.
And so like, in its intended environment, you barely notice it. Whereas all normal fashion, like I'm wearing a hoodie. If I go out in public and we meet up, you'd be like, oh yeah, that's your Star Trek hoodie, and you would notice it because that's what it is, and it's intended for these kind of social interaction environments, and it's not trying to hide itself. But Joe Camo walks up. And it's like, holy shit, check out that. That's some fucking crazy ass camo. I wonder what he can hide in. Like, is that an oak tree?
Well, and that's how you know somebody's actually a hunter because they have a fucking bright ass orange vest or a bright ass orange hat.
Yeah.
If they're not wearing either one of those, they're not actually hunting. And that's kind of where it's like.
I don't think bow hunters have to wear those things during bow season. I think that's actually a firearms thing. Once firearms are around.
I mean, it's like you have to wear them where firearms are being used.
Yeah.
So even if you're going bow hunting, in an area where firearms are being used, it's like I think you still have to wear like at least one piece of orange
I'm
fabric.
Advocating that everyone who goes out for any reason in the woods during any type of firearm season, and it doesn't have to be deer season, it can be rabbit season or coyote season or whatever season. If there are people using guns, wear a fucking orange hat.
At least.
At least an orange. Get a vest too, and some orange gloves or something. Just wear the orange. It doesn't. I'm sure that there's stuff out there that looks really cool now. It's not just some like, it doesn't have to look like a construction vest. I'm sure that there's clothing that is like hunter orange. I know there is. Hold on, I'll pull up someone on Amazon. Yeah, there's like over 20,000 results for hunter orange clothing on Amazon. There has to be some way to like not feel like a goober out in the woods.
I mean, who cares? You're out in the woods. That's the whole point. Is the only people who are gonna see you is something you're probably gonna kill. Then, so who cares if you look like you're about to hit the runway?
That's a good point.
Where the people who then wear this shit into the grocery store or just into public places end up making it this weird fashion statement, and that's kind of why
I'd want people to know that I owned a bunch of hunting equipment.
That's exactly what they're trying to. It's like those people are probably out rolling coal. They just want you to know, oh, I got a bunch of guns. Here's how you know I got guns without me carrying them in. I'm wearing this Carhartt hunting outfit. You know I got guns. I'm not gonna carry them with me everywhere because it's not legal. Otherwise, I would. And it's that person. They totally, they probably have a gun mount in their fucking truck.
Is that even a thing anymore?
With those people,
Holy shit. So I remember seeing that kind of thing in high school. They were like guys with trucks and they had gun racks in the back of their trucks, but they didn't have rifles or anything on them. They had like their bow, or they had fishing poles or things that they wouldn't get in trouble. There was an archery class at my high school, and so you could have a compound bow in your truck at school.
What school was that?
North? Yeah, Bloomington High School North. There was an archery class. I always thought that was incredible. Like nobody was concerned that one of the kids in the bow hunting class was going to go off the rails and start, taking the broadheads to people. Didn't worry about that at all. Shit.
Yeah, because people were stupid. It could have easily happened.
Yeah, it could have easily happened. We just got really fucking lucky.
Yeah, pretty much. Pretty much. Yep. And then all the people who like had rifles in high school, and they used to have rifles at IU. It's like, oh, we used to be able to do that. Yeah, you got fucking lucky. You guys got real lucky. All it takes is one person. It's not anything they did. They just got lucky and aren't willing to admit that part. It's like, man, my father is a goddamn pastor and he's willing to admit that there's luck in the universe. Because it's like, a lot of people don't want to acknowledge that there's an element of luck, because it's like the whole reason I got him to admit it is I'm like, if there was no luck, then getting into heaven would be a transactional thing, and God would not have the capacity to be like, no, this person, even though they followed all the rules, they didn't do this thing. And then there's like definitely examples of that happening. So that's where I'm like, you can follow all the rules, but there's still an element of luck where you're like, okay, even by this set of standards, like you still have to kind of get lucky. And then the people who don't follow the rules, some of those people get lucky. And he's like, well, yeah, that's true. So I'm like, if that guy can acknowledge that there's an element of luck that comes with existence, because it's like you can put in all the work, you can do all the right things, but sometimes there's like unluckiness that then makes it that shit doesn't work out. And then the people who got lucky will make it seem like, oh, I just did all the perfect things. Well, no, you did those things and there was an element of luck to it too. Because that's kind of where it's like, it's not binary in that, like, yeah, I put in a lot of work to do X, Y, and Z, but I also get lucky in certain elements. So it's not even just that my work is what makes me successful at whatever. It's that I also got lucky in one aspect, but it's like I didn't just get lucky. I did the work, and because I was like,
Well,
it's hard for people to acknowledge the luck. Then
the luck is the thing. No, doing the work gets you into the position. It puts you in a place where opportunity might present itself, and then
exactly
that's part of it. Like you could be lucky as hell, and if you weren't prepared for that moment, then it wouldn't matter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's kind of where it's like
there's a lot of things that we take for granted that involve extensive preparation.
Yeah,
and I think you touched on it earlier when you said that people see in our media you see someone doing something. Oh, it looks so easy. Yeah, I can do this, and then they go out and they try it. And sometimes people are successful, and sometimes people aren't. But then there's some things that take years of dedication to become proficient enough to just even pretend to know what you're doing. Like you sent me a link about an algorithmic music sequence generating rack extension, a plugin. And at first it's like I thought, man, I don't think I really see very much aside from this algorithmic generation that I can't already do with an existing tool. And it does less than that existing tool on like the broad end in terms of like what this thing can what it actually does, because it makes a lot of decisions for you. But like, I was as I watched videos about it or read about it, all I could think was like, this is a solution for somebody who doesn't want to put in the time.
Yeah, and that's part of it. And the more I see into the way that like big studio productions work, that is even more a red flag to me that independent artists really don't have a chance to become or to make careers in that field, where maybe 10, 15 years ago it was possible, and 30 years ago it was like even likely that if you had the talent you'd have a decent career. But now it's like the dumbing down of the audience in tandem with these automated production engines emerging makes it like South Park made a episode where it was making fun of how like a bunch of manatees picking from like a random word jumble could come up with a plot for a movie in Hollywood now. And that's kind of like that's where we are with creative endeavors in this country, not just movies, not just music, but it's like they're trying to automate creativity to sell it without having to then pay people who create it, but just get it good enough so that it's good enough to sell to someone, but it's the person that they've dumbed down who's not capable of telling the difference between a shitty human producer and a good algorithm. So that's where then they'll blame it on the audience not caring, but it's because the audience has been dumbed down, and it becomes this vicious circle of making people dumber to make it easier to sell them things. And the end result is a space that's completely devoid of creativity because the people who are consuming it don't actually desire quality. They just desire something to consume. And it gets back to the 70% lean fucking meat. It's like, oh, if I eat a burger, it doesn't matter if it's a good burger. I'll just eat a burger every day and I'm good. And it's like,
I'm going to eat a burger every day and I'm going to get colon cancer.
Yeah, I don't care. I gotta die of something. I'll smoke cigarettes and eat a burger every day. I'll smoke it's not good tobacco. It's tobacco with like a bunch of fucking pesticides and shit sprayed on. I don't care. I gotta die of something. So I'll eat the burger every day, and I'll smoke this really, really horrible toxic cigarette. Not just because American spirits, they're strong and they got a lot of nicotine, but they don't have a bunch of bullshit in them. Fuck American spirits though, because I got to roll that myself. No, I'm not gonna do that because I got to die something, and that audience eventually is the reason that the automated baseline generator is going to put independent artists out of a job sooner than later. I was of the mind that automated creativity had a longer window that it was going to be before it was closed, where real, I don't even want to call them real, human creatives didn't have to compete. But I think that window has closed a lot quicker than I anticipated.
Well, I think generative electronic music, where somebody has like a giant modular synthesizer with a bunch of signal generators that are all running off of some kind of pattern gate sequencer, and these are, I'm talking about like a lot of modules. Actually, I just described a fairly complex just a sequencer, something just to output a control voltage. Like even that's too complicated for most people. They're not going to. Most people aren't going to be able to figure out how to like turn the one dial to change the electrical signal within the entire system to adjust, the feel of the triplet when it emerges, if it emerges, based upon other conditions that are gated or running off of some other control voltage. And that stuff's complex, man. It needs to be simplified so that people can have that kind of experience without having to read, a desk load of manuals and guides and, actually working through tutorials probably for months before it sounds remotely like music. Yeah. There's a huge, and this is really directly speaking to your point that people think that they can just like watch a video and go and do something and be successful with it. Like, it takes years to learn how to play a musical instrument, if not a lifetime. And some people are really lucky and they can like pick up instruments almost instantly, and it amazes everyone's like, wow, how'd you make it do that? And so, I just did all these things. But on some level, the person who can pick up any instrument and start learning it probably started out as a child, and they probably already have like fluency, if not near mastery, with like several similar instruments. Like if you figure out how to play a lute, you can play every lute-like instrument. And if you understand a piano, you can play a significant number of instruments that are laid out like a piano. And so, and within families, there's similarities. And so some people are really lucky and they had a really good foundation. And so it makes sense that, oh yeah, I can just look at this thing and I know what it is. Or they've been around synthesizers their whole lives, and so it makes sense. But I think for the person that doesn't have a clue, that rack plug-in, rack extension thing is pretty exciting. And it can get somebody close enough to what they think. And then when they go back and listen to the music that inspires them, they realize there are all these like, bliss noises and ear candy and all this other, there's like layers and depth to the music that you can't just program, that has to be like performed at some point, or the performance is in the programming, and it's not just some like setting knobs or pressing buttons here and there, but it's a very carefully choreographed and automated performance of the entire system. And that's something that you just can't do by pressing a few buttons and dragging the mouse.
I think you'd be able to discern and I'd be able to discern, but I don't think the regular person would be able to discern at this point.
Yeah.
And that's what worries me, in that now that program somebody could take it and just take like 5 minutes of output and then have something that would be good enough to go in the background of a commercial.
Oh yeah.
Or in the background of a movie. Like, it's not going to be good enough to make mainstream music necessarily, but it's going to be good enough to make all of the stuff that independent artists would have been doing to actually make money.
Yeah, the
And
jingles.
yes, and that's what worries me, is because that was actually the only place where independent artists still had as a way to really make money. I think if not really the only way, because it's like most independent artists don't become mainstream successes. So in reality, like the only way I ever actually made money writing music was like selling it to games and things that needed music, but the music wasn't necessarily the main focus. And I think in general, a lot of musicians or even, visual artists, it's going to be the way they end up making the brunt of their money associated with that craft because of the way that things work. It's like people don't just have time or money to casually buy music enough to make it worth any individual's time to be an independent artist that's not affiliated with a big label for the most part. And that's kind of where, in reality, when it comes down to it, if you're making music, the only way you're really going to be able to like turn that song into something that's like any worthwhile sum of money is if somebody buys it to use it in something, whether it's a video game, a TV show, a fucking movie, whatever it is. It's not just going to be like, you got a million streams and now you've made $1,000, because even a million streams, it's like not even that much money. It's like
maybe
a negligible amount of money.
It could be like that. It could be like Iman Tobin's opening act, who's apparently been playing the same Red Can 45-minute single knob on the filter performance for the last like 20 years.
Well, and the thing you realize with Iman Tobin is because he did so much sampling, like he didn't actually compose a lot early on, and a lot of his shit was sampled and restructured in a way that, because people didn't know what he was doing then, they thought he was writing a lot of that music.
Yeah.
And that's when the cycle gets even worse, because it's like the people who didn't know what Iman Tobin was doing had kids that now don't know the fucking baseline generator exists.
Yeah. I think it's really actually credit. It's amazing to me how much about music and performance has evolved actually in the last 30 years. Because I remember, like in high school, going and seeing musicians perform on a stage, and then slowly it starts including more and more synthesizers, and then eventually we're at a point where, while live music still exists, and there are still rock and roll bands that go on tours and things like that, a lot of mainstream music is a DJ, or it's a band that's not actually a band. It's like hired musicians, studio musicians, touring musicians, and they're there for the tour, but they don't get together after the tour is done and start writing new music. There's like a whole culture of it that's just, it's performing somebody else's compositions, and that's cool. I think that's part of what's always been, that's always existed. But now we have guys standing behind an array of knobs and sliders and buttons, and it's glowing, and so the performance of music is very different than it used to be. And I saw a performance of electronic music in China, and it was literally a guy with his laptop, a mouse, and a little bank of knobs and a pad, and he pretty much used two knobs and did everything else with the pads and then the mouse, and everyone loved it. It was actually it was really interesting music. It was heavily sampled music, but it didn't look anything like the performance of the instruments that were involved at all. I wonder how many people out there have never actually seen someone playing the bass.
I don't think people actually care. And what ends up happening is it doesn't matter what the person sees. It doesn't matter what the person hears. As long as what they hear is entertaining, as long as what they see is entertaining, they don't have to actually match. Yeah. And I've seen this multiple different scenarios where it's like you would think they need to match, but they don't have to match for the audience to enjoy themselves. That's true. It's like only elitists within that culture actually care. Like DJs are really the only people who care what the DJ is doing compared to what's playing. Like if like a DJ spinning and their tables aren't plugged in, but there's music playing, nobody fucking cares except DJs. Seriously, nobody fucking cares except DJs. Like all the drunk people in the club, they don't give a fuck what the DJ's doing. They don't give a fuck what you just did with that mix. As long as the music's bumping and they can dance to it, nobody gives a shit. But people who specialize in that thing want everybody to really care. And that's like ultimately why I ended up as a DJ more caring about what the audience wants to hear than what like, oh, did I do this mix properly and all this shit? Nobody fucking cares. Like nobody, as long as it doesn't sound horrible, they don't really notice when you fuck up. And I learned that at a point where I'm like, man, that pressure, there's been a point where
there's an entire culture of jazz that doesn't care if you fuck up if it sounds good.
Oh, for sure. That's like one of the things I learned to implement in my approach. But I accidentally paused the music, but I caught it quick enough that it sounded like it was intentional. And nobody even stopped dancing one time. And it was like a complete fuck up. And that's where I'm like, nobody knew what the fuck just happened. I
think that actually happened during one of our monster mixes.
I mean, it definitely did. But that's not the first time it happened because it happens. Yeah. The problem is if you like, the time I was thinking about was at the Bluebird, which is where, no, not the Bluebird. It was like Uncle Fester's or some shit. Even where it doesn't even matter. The time I was thinking about was a completely different time. But what I learned is, like I said, if you accidentally do some shit, just go with it. Nobody fucking even notices unless you make a big deal of it. So that's where it was like in playing for enough audiences where like, as long as you don't draw attention to it, nobody actually cares. You know, and nobody's going to be like, man, you really sucked.
I actually have a very similar experience. A buddy of mine and I made a short film, a student film for this art thing that happened at God, where was it? It was that place around back of Kilroy's. It was that warehouse on like 9th Street or 8th Street or something like that. Anyways, that is not important. We spent like 36 hours from the time we started filming through editing and then to get it to this place. We basically did it all in a weekend. And we had sound, but we got there and there was no way for them to hook the camera up to the PA. So we just ran it through the projector. And I didn't make a big deal about it. My buddy helped me didn't make a big deal about it. One person said, "Where's the sound?" And then we heard somebody else in the audience say, "Shh." And then we're like, it's almost over, and the projection says, "Man, they're really into this." And I said, "How can you tell?" He's like, "They're not making any noise." Like they didn't know that it wasn't a silent film, but they enjoyed it anyways.
That's hilarious. Damn. Yeah, and that's where. Yeah, man. If you didn't tell people, they wouldn't fucking know. They wouldn't know the difference. Oh, this is really revolutionary. They did something different.
Holy shit, a silent film. This is
yeah. So, and that's where I'm like, it became a lot easier. Because then I started hearing like, okay, if you listen to Metallica play live, there's parts where they fuck up.
Oh, yeah.
But nobody cares. Nobody cares if like somebody sped up a little bit or somebody slowed down or somebody like missed a riff or something.
Actually, I'm going to inject here. Lars does care. He will grab a bottle of water, chug half of it, and then spittle it out in the direction of whoever makes the mistake. And I've witnessed this. He's the one that cares. But
yeah, exactly. Lars is the only one that cares.
But the other guys, they're just running around like doing their job.
Yeah, I mean, part of that too is like, if anybody fucks up timing, it's not actually going to be Lars, but it's like, yeah, you get. I don't think it's James either, but sometimes I feel like the bassist kind of.
Oh yeah,
it was either.
Was it Robert Trujillo? He's awesome.
He's awesome, but I think he like got off beat a few times when I watched him.
Yeah,
like, which again, it's like nobody's gonna fucking notice, but there's definitely times I was like, oh, this is Metallica. Somebody's like not hitting the fucking note correctly. Even Metallica misses notes. So that's where I'm like, and the only reason Lars doesn't miss any is because he's got a fucking metronome in his ear.
Yeah.
Which is not easy to play along with.
He's probably just as pissed off that there's a metronome in his ear as that other people are screwing up.
But good percussionists always use them, so it's like that's pretty standard for anybody who actually wants to keep time.
Oh yeah, man. So in all of my experiences recording, as soon as the click track is turned on, all of a sudden everything starts working. Everything locks in. Everyone's able to play together because they can actually hear what's going on, as opposed to trying to listen and like dial into somebody else, because everyone else is trying to dial into somebody else. And that every time I've gone to some concert where there was a jam band, it was always really wishy-washy. Like, man, where's this thing going? I already feel drunk.
Mm-hmm. That's why I couldn't really do jam bands all that often, because very few of them would use metronomes, and they would get in these like rhythmless sections that still had percussion. I'm just like, this is not. This is like, yes, it feels like you're drunk without actually drinking anything.
And it's unfortunate because I like the instrumentation. I like guitars and basses and drums and keyboards and organs and all that stuff. I like those older style of rock and roll instruments, but I also like songs.
Right.
And I think that's the thing that I really liked about electronic music, or still enjoy, is that like an entire album, when you listen to an entire album that's very well composed, there's this whole journey thing that goes on. And then similarly, when you're at a rave or at some event and the DJ really knows how to they know their tracks, they can select a bunch of songs that they can weave together, and in some way there's like this jam happening. It's like, what's going on here? This little mashup here section, it's awesome. And that's the new music that I get to hear and give me ideas and inspire me and things like that. But then I was still listening to these songs that had a beginning, middle, and end. Like there's still a resolution. It wasn't this unending noodling.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's part of it, is there has to be some sort of wind down and a direction in order for it to feel like you went on a journey. Otherwise, it just feels like you sat in a pool. And,
even though like the trip through space will be literally sitting in a pool. An endless acceleration towards a destination until you start to decelerate.
Okay, on that note, I have played this game XO1. It's
I think I know what you're talking. You're like a little disc and you like bounce off of it.
It's one of the coolest experiences I've ever had, and I think it was like a pretty unique. It was one of the most unique gaming experiences I've had, but I think it was like the way that they did it. It really, all of the things that I've conceptualized as far as like how an actual intergalactic traveler would work, it's one of the more plausible and still innovative, because like a lot of the things that I had thought about, they use them, but they still use it in a different way. So like it's like a biomass almost, like the way that the ship works. It's They even go into this in the game. It's like you can't really think of it in human terms, and they very much lean into the story not being told in a traditional way. Like it's a very unique experience because it's like I don't know. It came with the game with the Microsoft Game Pass. So I don't know how much it costs on its own. I think it's like
$17 on Steam.
which I'm like, I don't know if I could recommend it for $17.
I played it when it was in pre-release. The videos that I'm seeing on Steam now are the same videos with more detail. So
yeah, it's a really cool looking game, but I finished it in like 2 hours and 15 minutes or something. So
the version I played only had like 30 minutes. It was
it's longer than that.
Yeah. So I played a pre-release, like a beta,
and I didn't rush through it or anything.
Yeah,
but I could definitely see myself playing it again. But like I said, I'm not sure if movies cost like $15, then it's definitely worth $15.
Yeah,
but this is. I just wish more people could play this game just to get the experience to see like something different. And this is where I think the game really accomplished what it set out to do, in that it didn't feel like any game I'd ever played before. And it's definitely a game, but with all of the things that they gave you, I was happy that they didn't make it like there's no violence, but there's a sense of terror multiple times. It's like really crazy, like, you know,
there's still environmental threats. Like a planet could still destroy you,
but you can't even die in it. And that's the coolest thing of like, I thought it was really cool to not have this notion of like, oh, I can't even really die, but there's moments where you're like, the experience is fucking terrifying. Like in the sense of, okay, I doubt many Americans specifically have ever thought about what it's actually like to be on a gas planet. But I'm sure some people in their minds have tried to conceive of it. This game gives you the experience of actually being on a gas planet where you're like, okay, this is fucking terrifying. Like,
does the screen start shaking as you get closer to the surface or the core?
The screen shakes anytime you break the sound barrier.
Ooh.
Yeah. And it starts to, like, depending on your speed, the color of the screen shifts. So I will say there is a point where you're trying to escape the velocity of a black hole. And when you actually reach escape velocity, the screen is like fucking a weird shade of indigo. So there's these things that like
you have to blue shift.
Oh yeah, no, they are really, really scientifically accurate with a lot of the ways that they portray what would be the physics of these things.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where in that it's just a really alien experience. That's the only way I can describe it. And that's where they have done something that nobody has really done before. Yeah. And the physics of the game are just fucking amazing. So it's like there's all these things about it where I'm like, I don't think I can ruin it. Like if you don't play it, you won't understand what I'm even talking about. Everything I'm saying is abstract until you play it. You don't have to, like, I'm sure you can grasp what I'm saying because you got even a glimpse of playing it. Like you don't have to complete the game.
Oh, I mean, I'm seeing like trees and actual textures in this, and like instead of an orange orb, it's a surface of a sun. Like,
shit! So I have no idea how early you saw it then, because when I saw played
a really early version of this.
It was like full on. You know, it looks like you're on a different, like all the different planets have textures. Yeah. Like there's like a water world where it's all water.
Yeah, there was a water world, but the waves were just solid. There wasn't like texture.
Oh no, this is way more texture.
Yeah, and all of the images I'm seeing now are like. I mean, it's very clearly the same game.
Definitely need to play this thing.
No, I definitely want to play this game. I keep getting in this like vision of somebody in the metaverse like being foolish and while playing this game and turning off all the safeties on their haptic suit and then flying too close to a black hole and getting crushed.
Oh my god, yeah. No. Or not understanding how to get out of the gravity of a black hole and never getting out and getting stuck on that level. Because I think that level took me probably 15 minutes just to reach escape velocity. It was like you can get sucked back in too. And it's like, as you're reaching escape velocity, it's like, if you let off, you're going to go back in because of the way it works. So you have to basically like spend 15 minutes weaving your way to escape velocity. And then once you actually hit it, it's like, whoa, the visuals they give you are worth the experience alone. Cause then you're like, I don't know what it would be like, but this feels like what it would be like getting out of a black hole. And there's all these things about the story that are ambiguous, but it also makes it feels like they are telling a very specific story, even though it's super ambiguous with what they're saying. So that's where I feel like as an experience, it's like art in that people are going to be able to pull out what they feel from it.
We've talked about in I'd say reasonable depth about the complexity of traveling just within a galaxy, let alone to another galaxy. And so the idea of a alien species that has mastered intergalactic travel, like as you pointed out, nothing is really a threat to them. They can travel between galaxies. They don't have power generation issues. They don't have life support issues. They can just do whatever they want, essentially. And so, in a sense, like this is what it would be to be free.
Yeah, and it's like you really get a sense of the isolation on these planets where you're like, you've been flying around for half an hour and all you see are
trees or like land that is untouched by anything that nothing living sentient ever touched it. And that's where it's like I said, there's no threat. You can't die. You're never like, oh, I flew too close to the sun or something. Like that isn't even an existential threat, but you still feel terror and the horror of what it would actually be like if you're fucking flying around on an alien planet. Like, and that's where that, like I said, that sense, I don't think people truly grasp how terrifying it would be to walk somewhere you've never been before on the entire, like you never set foot on the entire planet. Everything is alien. Like that experience isn't. I mean, I've met people who are like afraid to go into the woods.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's that times a million.
Yeah. So like, I can only imagine like for the person that is afraid to go into the woods, leaving the planet isn't even an option. And then for people who want to go out into the woods, they're probably not going to be able to leave the planet anyways, but the part of me that wants to leave the planet just to see another planet is also like reminded by my brain. It's like, yeah, there's nothing there. Oh great, there's a big rocky outcropping. We can go to Arizona and see that and not die.
Yeah.
Oh, you want to see Mars? We can go down to fucking like Peru or wherever it is, Chile, where they do the filming for Martian landscapes and see the site that they've decided resembles Mars.
We can
go to Antarctica.
You can play around in virtual reality and do things that you couldn't do if you actually visited those landscapes.
Yep.
Which then there's no risk of dying. And it's like, then it becomes this, the way I can rationalize visiting virtual worlds rather than trying to go to an alien world now just for the sake of visiting one. I feel like I am more explorative by visiting the virtual worlds than actually visiting an alien one. And for many reasons, but just for the sake of like, there is the possibility that there is like a 2-dimensional digital realm in which things exist that then we like the way that the reboot story, the television show, I mean, there's other stories written like it, but like Tron, any sort of, we're using our hardware to interact with those things. I always frame it in my mind as that, and then it's like I'm exploring digital worlds that are like,
well, there's a VR game called Space Engine that uses science-based interactive. It's a science-based 3D interactive planetarium where you can fly around the galaxy. It's supposed to be like a universe model, but I doubt I don't know how much of the universe they've actually modeled. I think that'd be really difficult. There are plenty of opportunities to explore space with the tools that we have now, I think.
yeah. I mean, and this gets back to, it took us 40 years to send Voyager to the edge of the solar system, and then by the time it got there, our technology had advanced to the point where we could get something there within like 3 years. Or I forget what. Or if we use the proper, most high tech available engine, it would dramatically cut the time. So I'm like, on the one hand,
Voyager and Voyager 2, like they're so far out there and they're so old and they're deteriorating in such a way that we have to repurpose existing systems to send signals that we can read. They can't.
Yeah.
They're like, I think they had to leverage one of the antennas on. I think it's Voyager 2. They had to change one of the antennas because the what is it? Interstellar plasma was thicker than they thought it was. It was causing like noise in the system.
Heliopause.
Yeah,
The two.
like at the edge of it all, and it's just they had to use a different system to send back data, which is crazy.
They didn't even realize the interstellar plasma was a thing until it got there.
Yeah.
And that's where all of our models of the universe had to change.
What were they saying? Like they encountered a very strange noise.
Yeah.
We've encountered a strange noise. We're not sure what it is.
Yeah.
That's the sound of real deep space.
So it sounds crazy. On the one hand, I think to get space, we actually need to stop traveling into space or into deep space for now.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where it's like we should hold off any sort of
We need to be able to get to like
time.
Saturn in a couple hours.
Yeah, exactly. Until we can get to Saturn in a couple hours,
It's
using
not
technology
viable.
that works exactly, and it's a waste of resources.
Yeah.
In many ways, and it's framed as if it's scientific research, but in reality, like as our planet is made uninhabitable for us, because we're not going to kill our planet, as it's made uninhabitable for us, pursuit of the fucking dirt on Mars or some shit for
The moon
examination is just basically like a complete waste of resources.
We all
And
know what
it's
Amazon moon
pseudoscience.
water is.
Yeah, it's
Well, even if it's just to test the engine, they don't need to go to Mars to know that it could get there quickly. We can send a rocket to the moon and back and know that it'll get to Mars in a certain time frame because math is real. Math computes. We can project those things with a very high degree of accuracy. So why are we wasting our time even sending anything there? If not to, I mean, obviously they're going to try and mine the place, but how the fuck are they going to get it back to the Earth? We haven't solved the deriving energy from Mars to get things off of Mars issue yet. We have to send energy to Mars to get things off of Mars. All these things are like, we gotta pay twice to do any of it.
and we gotta basically build it twice.
Yeah. Who's actually gonna want to do that? We can't even pay the billionaires to give us real spaceships. They're just giving us roller coasters. At least,
Meanwhile, Elon's about to quit it all and become an influencer.
there's got to be some weird tax dodge involved.
Man, It has to be.
This is a scam. I mean, it's always been a scam, but this has got to be a scam.
It's got to be a bad week to be an Elon fanboy though, because like all the shit that people have been hyping him up to deliver that he was gonna save our species with. Now that he's talking about quitting, like what are they gonna say? How are they gonna rationalize this?
Maybe
the cult of Musk.
Maybe
Musky cult.
Maybe it's a ploy, because if he's not running Tesla and doing all of the engineering at Tesla, obviously, and doing all of the engineering at SpaceX and all of the engineering at Hyperloop and all of the engineering of Tesla, Elon flamethrower unit, whatever. Like if he's not investing all of his brain power in all of those things, maybe he'll finally have time to solve the rest of the world's problems.
But he couldn't solve his own company's problems.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're drinking those musketeers.
Oh, yeah. Eventually, it has to come to a head, right? It's going to boil over eventually. It's going to, I mean, unless we're in witness of like the world's biggest sunk cost fallacy materializing in front of us, like it can't last forever. I mean, all of this stuff is unsustainable anyways, but do you think people are going to hold on, like they're going to hodl until the end with
Oh man. I feel like they kind of have to, right? They gotta go down with the ship, otherwise all their friends will they're gonna get mocked anyway, right? One way or another. So I feel like they're gonna just go down with the ship. Oh, those people are so ridiculous, man.
Well, we're gonna get better batteries someday, eventually, either by Tesla or by Ford or GM or whoever's going to pump all the money into it. GM is getting ready to do their all electric Silverado, so they want to compete on the all electric front with Ford truck. And both of those companies have announced that they're transitioning to all electric fleets by like 2035, I believe. Some sooner than others.
That seems way too late to me.
It's too late, but it's also. I don't think it can happen.
I don't think it can happen either, honestly. But I just wonder why, like, what makes them think putting that projection off that long is like even acceptable. Like their goal should be by like 2027. Really,
I mean, I think that
with obviously they're not going to make either one, but it just doesn't even sound right to be like 2035. What? You're gonna not try for like the next 15 years?
I think it's a double-edged quandary here. Like it has to happen now. It actually has to happen like in 2017. But that wouldn't have provided enough time to train and adequately train the support industries, the secondary industries that provide maintenance or any of that stuff for these vehicles, because there's some of it that's brand new, and a lot of it's going to be the same, because 90% of a Ford truck is a Ford truck, and they're just changing the engine and drivetrain, or the engine, drivetrain, and power storage system, and they're moving this. But for the most part, the truck is still the same truck. So there's like, it takes a while to get certain people trained to work on electric motors and batteries and those systems, but I don't know. It should have happened a long time ago.
Yeah, it should have. But ironically, the same people who are making it impossible for those things to happen are the ones who could benefit from it the most, because all of these things should be nationalized to actually make it work. And then anybody who's part of that process would be like seen as the next fucking Teddy Roosevelt. If they were able to...
They don't want to be the next Henry Ford.
No. I mean,
They don't want to be Teddy Roosevelt. They don't want to be. They don't want to be Franklin Roosevelt. They want to be themselves. They think they think they're going to establish a new pedestal to stand upon instead of just climbing on top of the shoulders of their predecessors.
yeah, it's all falling apart.
We can't even solve that problem.
Man. So I don't know.
We don't have enough materials to actually meaningfully explore space, yet we're pumping money into low or high atmospheric or high altitude tourism. That's our culture.
This town just got destroyed by a tornado, and it's like I sincerely doubt that everything that got destroyed was insured. And then on top of that, whatever's insured, how do you get an insurance payout for something like this that doesn't break that insurance company? And who rebuilds all this stuff? Like, this is what our military should actually be deployed to fix. Things like this.
Yeah.
And that's where they shouldn't be. There's too many natural disasters to have an entire force of people dedicated to destroying shit. When we have nature that does this, we just need to be prepared to respond to this. Period.
Yeah.
Like if we can respond to this, Russia can't fuck with us. You know what I mean? And that's kind of like if we can respond to an F5 tornado and like fix it, or not fix it. You obviously can't bring the people back that died. But what I mean is, if we can, I don't know, and I don't know what scale the tornado was either, but something destroys a town and we can revive that town. If it needed to be revived, then there's no real country that could threaten us. And that's kind of that like approach to building isn't really. So people don't think of building as like something that makes you powerful.
Like what happened the other day apparently was like a meso tornado. It's a tornado system that occurs on the edge of a supercell. And so for that to happen, there's a lot of things that have to come together. Like you have to have a very large warm front and a very large cold front, and they both have to be moving in the right direction. And then there's like a wind shearing issue at various altitudes where they have to have, temperature interaction. And so what happened yesterday, what happened, or the other night, was not a common occurrence, but it happens. I bet it happens in I bet it happens in Russia. I bet they have big badass tornadoes in Russia too. I bet they have big badass tornadoes in China. I bet they have big badass tornadoes everywhere. We just don't know about them because it's not the kind of thing that we see as much of an existential threat as foreign military invading us, even though we're technically not adversaries. We're only adversaries.
It's 100% more likely that somebody is gonna get. I mean, 100%. A significant amount more likely that a person is going to encounter a tornado than the Russian military invading their town. That's why I was gonna say 100%, but it's not 100%.
I mean,
but significantly more than you're gonna way more likely encounter a tornado than the fucking Russian military in your town.
I mean, realistically, if the Chinese military shows up in any of our towns, it's probably because the shit got really bad and they're coming to help us.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Like I can see Putin sending Russian troops to help people. Like if there was some
flex would that be?
God, oh man, that'd be like the baddest ass shit. Like if Xi Jinping was like, hey, by the way, we're not sending in an occupation force. In fact, we're not sending any military weaponry at all. We're just sending in aid. Here's like what's a battalion of people here. We're just going to help you. They're all the highest rated English speakers in the military. They'll probably have bachelor's degrees in English.
I mean, they have military engineers are a thing.
Yeah.
And that's where I'm sure every military in the modern age has them. So I would not be surprised if they were like, "Hey, here's some engineers and some labor.
We're here to
Here's
help.
some help." Yeah. Big ass flex. Oh, you want to send bombs? We'll send help.
We're gonna send medical supplies and pop-up hospitals. Hold on, this hospital will take 3 days to inflate, but it'll be 4 stories tall and it will have a complete ICU. You can have that CT machine, by the way. We borrowed the designs from one of your companies 20 years ago. It's been updated though. That one's on us. You can have it.
Man. Yeah, so I don't know. I guess I'm like, how much worse do the weather events have to get for those people to actually change their behaviors, or if they are capable? Because that's where I'm like, if they're incapable of changing their behavior, then we are effectively under attack.
Yeah, we're being held hostage.
Weather. They're weather terrorists.
Yeah.
Yeah, we are. And that's kind of like
eco-terrorism is what
they are. Eco-terrorists
is the broad category that describes people who wield ecological damage as their means of. But they're not terrorists. They don't have some kind of. Well, maybe they aren't terrorists.
But they are. They are. They are the same people who are trying to spread COVID actively and trying to create COVID parties and shit like that. So I can't look at these people as being passive any longer. They're actively doing the things they are. And it goes beyond simple freedoms into them trying to impose their will on other people's space in a way that they claim they don't want done to them, just in the same way that they fucking take government subsidies and claim they'd be against socialism. So that's kind of where I'm like, these people are using double speak, and they always call shit out for being 1984. It's the exact thing that 1984 was saying would happen, except they never actually read it to know what double speak is. So like, New Think, they're fucking doing New Think.
Yeah.
Or what is it? New Speak. It's either whichever one. I always mix them up because like rappers, really good rappers will use them, and then I'll think of their verses like LPs talks about New Speak, and that's where I'm like,
yeah, it's Newspeak.
Yeah,
it's the official language of Oceania, a totalitarian superstate. It is the setting of the dystopian novel 1984. That's the opening line from the Wikipedia entry.
I think it's New Speak and Double Think then.
Yep.
Yeah. Which is where the people who always allude to something being 1984 don't even know what the fuck those things are. And because they've never actually read the book or seen any version of it done or performed or, you know, live action or whatever. So I'm super skeptical of treating right-wing Americans as anything but enemies of humanity. They're enemies of existence, basically. They're the ones that want Zionist fucking legend and prophecy to come true. They want Armageddon. They don't like themselves. They feel like they are sinners in God's eyes and want us all to die too because they don't like existing. And it's like they're just terrorists. And at that, we have a terrorist group within our country that has a very large influence over culture that then makes them look like they're not actual terrorists. So that's where I'm like, this isn't about voting or anything. Like, they're trying to destroy the planet. They're trying to destroy us as a species and trying to make us passive. So we just go vote about it every 4 years while they continue to destroy everything around us, hoping to bring about fucking Armageddon so they can have the rapture and prove they were right when obviously they're fucking wrong and they're just making things uninhabitable. The planet becoming uninhabitable for humans is effectively no different than Armageddon to them. So whichever way it happens, it will reinforce their beliefs, even if they bring it about by fucking rolling coal. And that's why I can't treat them as anything but terrorists. They're willing to just roll coal with this deep-seated self-hatred in hopes of bringing about Armageddon, as to why I can't get fucking replicators and shit like that. They're the reason that I can't get replicators. Our government has to spend so much money on fucking weapons because these little dick fuckheads want to fucking just destroy the planet under the guise of like Christianity. And it's not even Christianity. They just hate themselves. They just use Christianity as an excuse.
I mean, if God's going to sort them all out, then what makes them think that they're even going to get in if they're rolling coal or destroying the planet?
Because they're told from day one that they're special. You're special. Here's this little trophy for you. You're special. You deserve that woman, even though you're a fat slob. You've done nothing with your life. It's misogynist of her to not look at you because you've been such a good friend to her. You're in the friend zone. You're special. You deserve that hot woman just because you're a male. You've done nothing of note. You've actually not treated your body well. You're not that good looking. And it's like these people think that they deserve the best. Like, it's the Peter Griffin fucking syndrome, the Homer Simpson syndrome. Like, what has Peter Griffin done to deserve Lois Griffin? Absolutely nothing. But then Lois, by proxy of reducing herself, is no longer a catch because she'll fuck Peter Griffin. So it's like this process of making it seem like just being a male is like deserving of having a partner that's devoted to you, who's willing to bear your children, who's willing to be the mother of your child, just because you're a dude. That's the shit that's constantly reinforced by the media. It's constantly reinforced by the parents. And this is why you end up getting like, it's a specific demographic who will continuously lash out when they realize they're not special.
They're not even the main character in their own story.
They're not even the main character, and that's when they fucking lash out. You're gonna respect me. I'll show you I'm the main character. I'll go GTA on your ass. And that's when they get that realization that all that bullshit that they've been fed about being exceptional, like it's not real. And then it's a harsh reality for a lot of them because that's the only thing they've ever known. And we see it over and over, man. Big fish, small pond, never actually done anything, never actually learned to swim.
They're not even the main character in their own story.
Mm-mm.
I'm just going to stick with that because that seems like the easiest way to explain that kind of behavior. And they're just give them some space. They're not even the main character in their own story. An extra in their own life.
And they never even consider that. And that's what's fucked up is like, obviously there comes a point in everyone's life where it's like, okay, you need to consider what my existence means to the rest of humanity, if anything, and like, is it reciprocal one way? And I think that's where people who are honest with themselves, like even actors who've made millions of dollars and made big ass movies, what the fuck have they actually done for humanity? And it's like anybody, like we're basically compartmentalized to this fucking floating rock, and we can do what we can, and we can't really feel bad for being limited by our circumstances. We're not able to travel to a different universe. We're not able to just go to a different colony. There's a lot of things that we're limited. I mean, not just planetary wise, even with capital being part of it. So as individuals, we work within a ton of limitations and then feel the brunt of the weight of not becoming something of note for all of history. And it's just this weird, disproportionate set of expectations with the actual limitations that we're up with. And it's like we're all gaslit into slowly realizing that, like, if there's 7 billion people at any given time, it's like really hard for one to actually do anything of value. And that's okay. But at the same time, you also have to realize there's like 7 billion people, and it's like, oh shit, we have to continue this thing together. And there's this like thing that's larger than myself that I'm hopefully a part of. But if I don't do my part to make sure this thing continues, then it could all come to a screeching halt. And it could all come to a screeching halt randomly for none of our, like, if an asteroid hits, nothing, there's some things that we think we could do about it. But that scenario is like, yeah, nobody could have done anything about it. And nobody wants to acknowledge that. So we make movies where we solve the problem, and fucking Bruce Willis comes in and he's like, hey, I'll sacrifice myself like Jesus did, and I'll kill this fucking asteroid, and yay, America. So those things make us feel better about dealing with not actually being able to control that asteroid.
I think the only thing that made that whole movie believable was the Aerosmith soundtrack.
Yeah, there was nothing believable. And then Deep Impact,
I don't think we
even
have
less believable.
I don't think we have any modern music like bands that can carry a movie like that.
No, I mean, and I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, though, because then that's where you're like, oh shit, they carried a whole movie off of a song. This is when movie soundtrack songs would precede the movie, and the soundtrack would sell like Godzilla when fucking Puff Daddy came out with that song, and then everyone's like, this is gonna be awesome, and then it fucking sucked.
Oh, that movie was so terrible.
It was like, okay, I don't know if this is a good or a bad thing, because the same shit happened with Aerosmith, and that's where, yeah, I don't know if that was like peak stupidity or peak music. It's
the intersection of both. It's the intersection of peak music, peak rock and roll, and peak stupidity. It's like,
which is that a coincidence? I don't know. Maybe,
no, I'm pretty sure.
Not.
I think peak stupidity and peak rock and roll actually go hand in hand and have since the dawn of rock and roll.
So it tracks. But that's where I'm like, I feel, in retrospect, I feel like movies such as Armageddon and Deep Impact are meant to just deep with this deep-seated biological understanding that, yeah, fucking asteroid could hit at any moment, and you want to believe Bruce Willis from Die Hard could do something about it. Who knows? Like, the character in that movie's name was so inconsequential that it's like, if anybody had a gun to their head or was like given the opportunity to win $1 billion by naming that character without fucking Googling it, they probably couldn't. His full name? No, you couldn't. Unless you're like that one Armageddon fan who was like waiting for that moment and that they dedicated their lives to Armageddon.
All I can come up with is he was the driller guy who somehow sired Liv Tyler.
The name was so inconsequential. The person was so inconsequential, but he was such a big character in saving humanity. But nobody remembers anything but Bruce Willis, because that's what attaching Bruce Willis to that fucking lineup was meant to do for peak stupidity. It's like, okay, we'll take Will Smith, put him in the fucking lead role, we'll call it Hancock. We'll make it super, because Hancock was a good movie, but like nobody knows. Was it John Hancock? What was his full name in that movie?
Yeah.
Just Hancock. I don't fucking know. I'm not going to pretend I know.
I think the best scene in Armageddon was when Steve Buscemi was sitting on the nuke, like Slim Whitman style, and he's like talking about how he had the best seat. He had a front row seat. That was the scene. That was the moment. That was the existential dread moment.
He stole the show. He totally stole.
Oh, he was great in that movie. That was like, he was the best part of that movie. Especially when he gets back and like the Russian or his whatever stripper wife and shows up, and then the Russian mobster guys show up too at the landing strip somehow. Like somehow those guys got through security.
Yeah.
Yes, he is brother. We need to give him a hug.
Yeah.
Fuck.
Back then, probably though.
Yeah.
They let anybody through fucking security. Oh, you going to the gate? What's that? Luggage? Oh, who cares? Go ahead. You got I think you have a sign in there. I trust you.
I've got a good feeling. You've got a good aura.
Yeah, 1995 is just, we're just a lot more free. You'd think this was the 70s.
Meanwhile, the 70s.
Smoking in airports and shit.
Shit.
I remember stepping on a fucking cigarette at an airport when it must have been like 1992 or 3. But I had to take my shoes off because my fucking feet swelled up, and I fucking ended up stepping on a lit cigarette inside an airport. Inside an airport, not outside. Inside an airport.
That's like a whole new level.
Smoking. Yes. Because that's where we still have the fucking ashtrays on the planes because our fleets are fucking old as shit.
Yeah.
But I think I was on the tail end of when they were still smoking on planes. Like I don't think they had completely outlawed it. It was, I think it was banned in the early to mid 80s to the point where I'm like, I think there's those same people like the anti-maskers who would continue to do it after the ban had happened. So it was like they'd have to have the fucking stewardess come, sir, can you please put that cigarette out? And it would be like the same people, sir, can you please put your mask on? It's the same people now that would fucking break the smoking ban on the planes that now want to fucking have their dick noses out with the masks. Like, so there's always this type of person who wants to think the rules don't apply to them and they're special. And that gets back to that bullshit of like mediocre males being told that somehow they deserve more than everybody else because they just happen to be that specific demographic.
They're American, right?
Yep.
They're American. They're red-blooded Americans. They're exceptional. They are saviors of humanity or some shit. Oh, yeah, that's like He-Man.
It's their burden that they have to deal with.
Their burden, only their burden. None of us none of us even know what that burden is. I mean, we can talk about it, but, you know, as you pointed out, I'm not that white. You're not white. We can't know what it is. We just can't know. And they can't explain it.
No.
the same thing that everyone's afraid of.
Exceptional Radio.
Exceptional Randos show is produced live in Sunroom Studios' Base Capsule and in partnership with KLST 103.5, radiocallisti.org. Remember to catch our Exceptional Randos live stream on YouTube every Sunday between 2 and 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And if you have a story, idea, or question that you would like to share, we want to hear from you. Thanks for listening.
Well, that was random.
Exceptional Radio.
Where that last half an hour was zoomed. Set course for Earth. Engage base drive. Digital modulation of genetic code commence.
Nice. You used to hold me, you used to feel me, you used to kiss me, you used to touch me, you used to please me, you used to squeeze me, you used to love me, you used to touch me.